Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging headfirst into, well, the year's most thrilling and sometimes genuinely terrifying cinematic landscape. Our mission? Pretty simple, really. Cut through all the noise, give you a shortcut, get you well informed on the highest rated horror movies of 2025 so far, because honestly, 2025 is already looking like an exceptional year for horror. And it's not just the big screen anymore. Great films are popping up, like, everywhere, and it's just so easy for good stuff to slip through the cracks, isn't it?
Absolutely, and that's precisely why we're here today. This deep dive, it isn't just some random list. It's built on a pretty clear methodology. We're focusing entirely on critic scores from Rotten Tomatoes, specifically for films released in theaters or on VOD, that's video on demand, or streaming for the first time this year in 2025. The value for you, the listener, is, well, hopefully immense. You'll discover stuff you might have completely missed, or maybe just get confirmation on which terrifying titles you absolutely need to prioritize. So where should we start with this really impressive lineup?
Okay, let's unpack this. What's been making critics scream, in a good way? I'm really curious to kick things off with a long-awaited sequel that actually delivered 28 years later. Director Danny Boyle, writer Alex Garland. Reunited after almost 2 decades away from that world. Critics really embraced it, 88% approval.
Yeah.
And it even crushed it at the box office, like $150 million worldwide. What do you think made this return so successful, especially after such a long gap?
It's a fantastic question, and it is pretty rare. Seeing a creative team return to a beloved world like the 28 Days Later universe after so long and hit such a home run. Critics are really praising how Boyle and Garland evolved the story. Okay, so it's almost 3 decades since the rage virus. We see survivors under ruthless quarantine on this small island connected by a heavily defended causeway. But then a mission to the mainland unearths mutated horrors and other survivors, and everything just changes. The significance isn't just nostalgia, I think. It's that they found fresh ground, new ways to explore the ongoing nightmare of that world. What's particularly interesting, though, is the audience score. 64% shows a bit more division there. It makes you wonder, right, where some viewers may be expecting something more traditional or perhaps less evolved.
That's a fascinating point about the audience view, is that a common challenge for these long gap sequels, finding that balance between what made the original great and, pushing the story forward. And speaking of pushing boundaries, let's talk about new voices. The Philippou brothers, Danny and Michael.
Right, talk to me.
They made a huge splash with Talk to Me in 2023. Their follow-up with A24, Bring Her Back, landed an 89% critical rating. It felt like this film really proved they were more than just a one-trick pony. What elements cemented their reputation this time?
You're absolutely right. Bring Her Back is, well, it's definitely brutal. Not for the faint at heart, let's be clear.
Yeah.
But critics lauded it for its relentless tension, its inventive scares. And it features a really stellar lead performance from Oscar nominee Sally Hawkins. She just grounds the film's pretty wild premise, which is a brother and sister uncover this terrifying ritual at their new foster mother's secluded home. It's packed with incredible twists, too, twists that genuinely earn their shock value, and it showcases the Philippus' ability to weave, real emotional depth into extreme horror, which is why critics saw it as such a strong sophomore effort. It proved their staying power. The audience rating here, 79%, also suggests a pretty strong connection.
Good point. So from the brutal to body horror together, this has been maybe the most talked about body horror movie of 2025 so far.
Gotten a lot of buzz.
Yeah. Starring real-life married couple Allison Brie and Dave Franco, directed by Michael Shanks. This one hit 90% critical rating, made a huge splash at Sundance, got that big deal with Neon. What made its impact so undeniable? You mentioned unforgettable imagery before.
It really lived up to its buzz, I think. The marketing was clever, sure, but the film itself delivers on its promise of, well, discomfort and visual horror. So Tim and Millie, Franco and Bree, they moved to the country years into their relationship. They're at a crossroads. Tensions are already high.
Right.
Then this nightmarish encounter with a mysterious sort of unnatural force threatens to corrupt their lives, their love, even their actual flesh. What really stands out is how it uses that physical transformation, the grotesque imagery, not just for shock value, but to kind of externalize the deteriorating state of their relationship.
Yeah.
It's body horror as metaphor, which can be incredibly effective. The audience also seemed to respond well, 76% rating there.
Interesting. Shifting focus a bit, let's look at international horror. Director Thorder Paulson's The Damned also hit 90% critically, but it seems to have flown a bit under the radar. Stars Dessa Young, Joe Cole, Siobhan Finneran. What's particularly interesting, though, is that huge audience division. Only 47% audience rating. That's a massive gap.
It really is.
What do you think critics saw in The Damned that audiences just didn't quite connect with?
That's a really crucial question, isn't it, about audience perception. The Damned has this chilling premise. Even her crew find a shipwreck, and they face this profound moral dilemma. Help the survivors or, prioritize their own survival. Critics praised its slow burn tension, its really bleak atmosphere, the moral ambiguity. It leans heavily into psychological dread.
Okay, I see.
Audiences, on the other hand, might have found that pacing just too deliberate. Or maybe the lack of clear-cut answers was unsatisfying for some. It's a film that asks a really important question, but it doesn't give easy answers. And that can sometimes be a sticking point for mainstream viewers expecting, perhaps, a more conventional horror narrative.
Right.
It really highlights how different metrics, critics versus audience, measure different aspects of a film's success.
Makes sense. Continuing with international horror, we have Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Cloud. He directed Pulse. Remember that one?
Classic.
So Cloud boasts a 92% critical approval, had a strong festival run Venice Fantastic Fest before its U.S. theatrical release. When we talk about it being a stylish, subversive thriller, how does Kurosawa achieve that specific feel? What makes his approach so distinctive?
Well, Kurosawa is just a master of atmosphere, and Cloud is a perfect example of that. It follows this character, Yoshi, an ambitious but sort of directionless young factory worker. He has this side hustle in black market reselling. As he tries to disconnect from humanity, his life becomes plagued by these mysterious, sinister incidents. Kurosawa doesn't really rely on jump scares. Instead, he crafts this deeply unsettling mood through, masterful sound design, sparse dialogue, a sense of growing paranoia that just slowly chips away at your sense of reality. The subversive element, I think, comes from how it plays with our expectations of horror. It often leaves the true source of terror kind of ambiguous, deeply psychological, rather than just relying on, overt monster reveals.
Very cool. Okay, now for the return of a beloved franchise after, what, a 14-year break?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Final Destination Bloodlines hit theaters this year, and it became the biggest Final Destination movie ever at the box office. Directed by Adam Stein and Zach Lipovsky, earned an impressive 93% critic rating, 87% audience rating. What made this particular entry an instant favorite after such a long hiatus? How did it manage to be so, well, universally acclaimed?
It's fantastic, isn't it? To see a legacy franchise not just come back, but truly excel. This film really cemented itself as an instant favorite because it managed to innovate while still respecting the core concept. So, college student Stephanie is plagued by this violent recurring nightmare. She seeks out someone to break the cycle, save her family from their inevitable grisly demise.
It's a classic setup.
Exactly. But critics praised its ingenious set pieces, those creative, elaborate death sequences Final Destination is famous for, but also its fresh approach to the lore. It delved into the idea of bloodlines and fate in a way that felt new, without betraying the original concept. It just struck that perfect balance between gruesome fun and genuine tension, which is clearly paving the way for a seventh entry. People are already talking about it.
No surprise there. Sticking with high-rated films, Warner Bros. Brought us Companion, an AI-tinged, futuristic thriller, also has a 93% critic and 89% audience rating. Very strong. With Zach Cregger producing, fresh off Barbarian success, and director Drew Hancock's unique approach to what's been called a love story, this one definitely stood out, especially with Sophie Thatcher's killer lead performance.
Absolutely.
What made this film help usher in the year of horror so strongly, even with its somewhat vague synopsis?
This film was definitely a statement piece early in the year. While the synopsis is intentionally vague, it's an incredibly effective and unsettling exploration of AI and futuristic suspense. What's truly compelling about Companion, I think, is how it blends those high-concept sci-fi fears with a very human emotional core. Sophie Thatcher's performance is just magnetic. She carries the film's emotional weight while confronting this increasingly disturbing technological threat. It's less about jump scares, really, and more about existential dread. That creeping horror of technology gone awry, that made it a very sophisticated and honestly timely piece of horror that seemed to resonate deeply with both critics and audiences.
And speaking of Zach Cregger, he's 2 for 2 this year.
He really is having a moment.
His solo directorial effort, Weapons, Earned a phenomenal 94% critic rating and an 87% audience rating. Got an all-star cast too, Juliet Garner, Josh Brolin. Cregger is really making his distinct voice heard in horror. What defines that voice, and what kind of twisted mystery does Weapons unravel?
Cregger truly has this unique voice that blends horror with dark humor and really unexpected twists. Weapons is a perfect example. The chilling premise revolves around a community just left questioning everything, when all but one child from the same class mysteriously vanish on the same night.
Wow.
Critics loved how it kept them scared, guessing, and yeah, even laughing at times. It's got this undercurrent of black comedy, a tightly plotted mystery with genuinely terrifying moments, but that dark humor sort of disarms you before hitting you with the next shock. Cregger's approach feels refreshing because he's not afraid to play with genre conventions, subvert expectations, deliver something genuinely original.
Sounds intense. Okay, up next, a film leading this trend of public domain horror, The Ugly Stepsister. For anyone unfamiliar, this is where filmmakers take classic stories, characters whose copyrights expired like Winnie the Pooh, and twist them into new, often gruesome horror tales.
Right, that whole subgenre.
This twisted take on Cinderella by Emily Blichfeld has a stellar 96% critical rating. It seems to be setting a new standard for what was, let's be honest, kind of a bizarre subgenre before. How does it manage to rise above the often poor quality we've seen elsewhere in this space?
That's precisely what makes The Ugly Stepsister so remarkable. While films like Winnie the Pooh's, Blood and Honey kind of kicked off this craze, many subsequent entries have been, well, less than stellar, often just relying on the novelty factor, you know?
Totally.
The Ugly Stepsister, however, is genuinely acclaimed for its artistic merit. The premise is this gory tale of ambition. Elvira battles to compete with her insanely beautiful stepsister in a fairy tale kingdom where beauty is described as a brutal business. She goes to any lengths in this gory tale of the blood and sweat, grit and gold. Critics praised its sharp social commentary on beauty standards, its unique visual style, and its commitment to being a genuinely dark and unsettling fairy tale, not just a cheap gimmick. It really elevates the subgenre significantly. The audience clearly agreed, 87% rating there.
Impressive. And finally, crowning the highest-rated horror movie of 2025 so far is Sinners.
Here we go.
Director Ryan Coogler, Black Panther fame, reunited with star Michael B. Jordan for this one. It's got a near-perfect 97% critic rating and a 96% audience rating. I mean, that's about as close to perfect as it gets.
It's staggering, really.
What made this film resonate so universally, not just in horror, but across all genres for 2025, to the point where people are saying it might someday be considered one of the greatest mainstream movies in horror history?
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here is just the sheer consensus. The quality. This isn't just the best reviewed horror movie of the year so far.
Right.
It's one of the most acclaimed films of 2025, period.
Right.
Regardless of genre. It's reached universal acclaim, I think, because it blends this deeply personal narrative with relentless, expertly crafted tension. The premise follows twin brothers, both played by Jordan, who return to their hometown to start again, only to discover an even greater evil waiting to welcome them back. Critics highlight Coogler's masterful direction, Jordan's incredible dual performance, and how the film tackles these profound themes, family, legacy, redemption, all within a genuinely terrifying framework. It manages to be both really emotionally resonant and utterly horrifying. And that's just a rare combination that makes it feel truly special, potentially historic.
Wow. Well, there you have it. A whirlwind tour through the highest-rated horror movies of 2025 so far. From highly anticipated sequels delivering fresh takes, like 28 years later, and exciting director reunions, to breakout international films like Cloud and the Damned, and even innovative subgenres like The Ugly Stepsister proving their artistic worth. It's clear 2025 is shaping up to be a banner year for horror. We really hope this deep dive has given you a fantastic shortcut to staying informed and maybe discovering some new favorites to scream along with.
Absolutely. And it makes you think, doesn't it? Considering the diverse approaches we've seen, the consistent critical acclaim, the sometimes varied audience reactions, what does this current landscape suggest about the evolving definition of horror itself? It feels like the genre is pushing boundaries more than ever, from psychological dread and body horror to social commentary, legacy sequels. What stands out to you from this deep dive about where horror might be headed next? Something to chew on.